Well, hi Earthlings, I hope you're well. I'm waiting for the to get some ink for the VIP Vegan Information Project photocopier, so I thought I'd do a YouTubey thing. And it's also, as we say in Ireland, lashing down, so if you can hear a lot of rain pelting off the roof of Neville here, the VIP van, then you'll know what that's all about. And an update on Neville that I don't think I mentioned before is that he passed his test with flying colours, didn't you, Nev? And so that's grand. As I said last time, Neville has a personality, do not doubt it for 1 second. I posted a Facebook status today. It's actually an interesting day for me because I started back at my university, just filling in for someone on a course about migration, race and ethnicity, which is a really interesting subject. In actual fact, some of the material for the second lecture really relevant to the animal movement. I might try and post some of that. It's really interesting. Anyway, I also posted this thing on Facebook just you know, while I was kind of waiting, and I was saying that why is it that talking about animal rights seems so alien to members of the animal movement, and all I hear is cruelty claims. So this is like an echo of a video I've done already, and so I'll give the link to that below. But really, it's also another plea really for us to take animal rights seriously. And when I say animal rights, I mean rights-based animal rights of the kind that you would get from the likes of Tom Regan and Joan Denea and Gary Francione, although, you know, he's moved away from rights in some kind of way. At least he doesn't mention rights as much as he used to. So, you know, my plea is for animal rights to be taken seriously as a philosophical matter, but in terms of a social movement, in terms of claims making, I really want animal rights to be the foundation of our claims making in the way that it was for a short period of time in the 1980s, when Tom Regan's work kind of, if you like, superseded the work of Peter Singer. And then Regan's work was deliberately marginalised, in my view, by the animal movement on the grounds that it was more radical than Singer, implies veganism rather than vegetarianism, and therefore in terms of the national groups, that means that the donor base is reduced. And there is some really interesting work by Dr. Nick Pendergrast about the fact that the reason the national groups don't maintain a consistent, straightforward vegan message is because they can't afford to, in the sense that you don't get as much money by doing that as by fudging the issue, confusing the issue, and by talking about things like veg and veggie and that kind of thing. And so you'll see that most of the language of the national groups is very all over the place in terms of animal rights and in terms of veganism. Deliberately so, I think, philosophically. I pointed out on this thread on Facebook that Peter still have only one philosophy book for sale, and it's still Peter Singer's Animal Liberation, which they claim to be the Bible of the animal rights movement. And they say that the book is about animal rights, and they also say if you only get one animal rights book in your life, as it were, then get this one. All that is very misleading. You know, Peter Singer does not stand for animal rights. He doesn't think rights is a good foundation for social movement claims making, whereas the rights-based people like myself, Tom Regan, etc., would indeed do that and would cherish the idea of being able to successfully, clearly and without confusion be able to present an animal rights case to the public in order for them to assess its merits and hopefully cut through some of the problems that I see about taking on these constant cruelty claims. As I mentioned in the other video, I think that when we get involved with the cruelty paradigm, we're really teeing ourselves up for a long, tedious argument within the welfare tradition, you know, and that's not really where we want to be. This actually, ironically, is where the animal user industry wants us to be. If you make an animal rights point outside a circus or anywhere else, the industry and politicians that support the industry will always translate that down to animal welfare. And the classic case being, you're outside a circus, you say other animals have rights, and they will say yes, but we've been inspected by the large animal welfare body like the RSPCA or the ISPCA in Ireland, or the humane societies in the States. They can't really address animal rights points, and we're really letting them off the hook, I think, when we join in with the welfare cruelty language. I think we're letting them off the hook rather there. One issue that I wanted to address, which was raised on this thread, and it was raised by Salim Khan. Now, I apologise if I got that name wrong and the pronunciation wrong, and I also apologise if I'm supposed to use the full phrase. I'm a bit ignorant on that one. Sorry about that. Salim Andreas Piro Khan, I think. So again, apologies if any of that is wrong. That's not meant in any way. But what's been said there is that the founders of the vegan social movement, Leslie Cross has mentioned, and also the 1979 definition by the Vegan Society was mentioned, that doesn't address animal rights, which is true. Now, I responded by claiming that is rather like saying that Karl Marx didn't say anything about feminism. In other words, they were writing and coming up with their ideas, their radical ideas about veganism, a long time before animal rights in a social movement sense was really beginning to formulate itself. And so we can think, going back to 1965 in England, with an article by Bridget Brophy, which Richard Ryder claims to be the birth of the animal rights movement. And then not long after that, within 10 years certainly, then Tom Regan was turning his hand to what would become the abolitionist case for animal rights, which really kind of kick-started things, certainly in North America, for a good spell. So I wanted to kind of deal with that issue. I think if you think about the radicalism of the vegan pioneers, who are producing such a radical idea at the time of war, I think it's not a stretch of imagination to think that their justice for all philosophy, and Cross did talk about the the emancipation or the liberation of other animals would mean the emancipation and liberation of humankind, and on the grounds that the philosophical writing of animal rights is also based on human rights thinking, or a limited part of it, negative rights and all that, and moral rights. I don't think it's a stretch of imagination to think that the founders of the vegan social movement would be quite happy to be associated with the idea of rights-based animal rights. So that's kind of what I wanted to say, and let's have a rights-based animal rights movement. I know that there are a lot of people who don't like animal rights for various reasons. There are feminist objections, there are anarchist objections, there are utilitarian objections. Well, fair enough. The problem with all of that is that all of those people, with all their fair and sometimes valid objections and critiques of animal rights, they are still quite often themselves quite happy to use the label animal rights, and that's the thing that causes all the confusion. So I repeat my kind of plea for manners in a way. If you don't believe in animal rights, and and I'm saying there are people who do and want to put rights at the centre of their claims making, at the centre of their social movement efforts, if you don't believe in them, then please don't use the name. Why would you? Why use a name of an idea that you don't agree with? And the only reason that people do that is because we've allowed this idea to be stripped of its philosophical foundation, and that to me is really wrong, because I think it's a strong claim. It's a really strong way of protecting interests. Other animals have interests. Other animals have rights. They're rights bearers, they're rights holders, and when we use them, when humans use them, that's a rights violation. That, I think, is a very strong message to give. It's much stronger to me than going, oh, don't be cruel. I think that's a much stronger message. So, if you don't believe in rights, let us have rights, please. You know, let us have the label, because we adhere to the philosophy. You know, it's only fair when you think about it. Okay, Roger and out. Signing off. See you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.